listening to the Booktrospective Podcast, a podcast for all types of books. And even though we read all types of books across all different types of genres, we want to give a disclaimer. Many of our books and a lot of our content sometimes is intended for mature audiences. And we don't believe in censorship, but we do want our listeners to have the opportunity to decide if our episode or podcast is good for them. So with that, let's get into the episode.
My mom says, and I quote, "They need to wear pants."
Oh, I do remember you saying that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I recall. Okay. I do remember. Hey, it's Dominique.
And Keely.
And you are listening to Booktrospective. And this week we are doing The Roommate Risk by Talia?
Talia.
Hilbert? Okay, cool. I really have got to start checking pronunciations beforehand. But first, Keely, how was your week?
My week was slow. Business has been slow. I've been slow. But all right, nothing special. Birthdays.
Oh yeah.
My whole family decided, not my whole family, I'm being dramatic, but a lot of my family decided that, the end of July was a great time to be born. So
it's a great month. I do agree.
So yeah, I had, which we've not really celebrated much of them yet, but my great aunt and my cousin, their birthday was the 24th. My grandma's was yesterday, and then Peyton's is Sunday. So, and they're having a family birthday celebration get-together thing tomorrow, but I may or may not make it. We'll see.
Oh. No. I love July. It's a good time. What did I do this week? Let's see. I went to Kings Island.
How's that?
It was okay. It was very busy for a Monday. There was lots of camps and stuff.
Mm.
I don't like roller coasters. I rode them as a kid because I felt like a punk. And now that I'm a mom, I'm retired. Plus my kids like them, but they can ride together. But I was stressed out because Carter's tall enough, but he is not heavy enough, in my opinion. So I was stressed out because I'm and he's more Daredevil than Cameron is. So when she had some reserve, I was good, because I feel even though he's tall enough, I was I really didn't I was nervous. So I was let's go to the water park. So we did that, and then I worked. I'm starting to get some electricity in this. Okay. So the shed has wiring, but I have to tap into the electric company. It's so expensive. This the shed electricity is the most expensive part. Once that's done, then I can finish out the shed. So I'm super excited about that. What else did I do this week? I don't think I've done a lot. My kids are gone this weekend, so that's nice. Cameron's camp's finally over. I feel summer, there's only 2 weeks left, and I feel I haven't had a summer yet. I've gotten up early every day, so it sucks. I can't believe summer's almost over. So I think that's it. I don't know. Yeah, whatever. All right, well, let's get started. So, do you have the blurb?
I have the blurb. Jasmine Allen believes in bad luck, great wine, and the seductive power of a stiletto heel. What she doesn't believe in is love. Her life is perfect without all that romantic rubbish until a plumbing disaster screws everything up and leaves Jazz homeless. Luckily, she has someone to turn to, her best friend Rahul, who for 7 years, Rahul Khan has followed 3 simple rules. Don't touch Jasmine if you can help it. Don't look at her arse in that skirt. And don't ever, ever tell her you love her. He should have added another rule. Do not, under any circumstances, let Jazz move into your home. Now Rahul is living with the friend he can't have, and it's decimating his control. He knows their shared dinners aren't dates, their late-night kisses are a mistake, and the tenderness in Jasmine's gaze is only temporary. One wrong word could send his skittish best friend running, so why is he tempted to risk it all? This book was previously published as One of Bet. The Roommate Risk is a steamy, standalone, diverse romance. This book has 75,000 words of fluff, angst, and extreme pleasure with no cliffhangers, no cheating, and a guaranteed happily ever after. Please be aware the story contains themes of parental neglect, abandonment, parental death, and alcohol dependence that could trigger certain audiences. So there's our triggers.
Oh, we got our triggers. Okay. So if you could describe this book in one word, I'm laughing at Evie. What word would you use?
I came prepared today. Desire.
Okay. I'm gonna say infuriating because I was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. More about that at the end. So just general spoiler-free summary. First of all, this is the second book of the series.
Yeah, but it's a standalone.
Yeah, it's a standalone. Yeah. So I didn't know that. I didn't know anything about this series. I don't know anything about this author. They are British. But they are POCs. They're people of color. I think Rahul is Indian.
Yeah,
it seems
I believe
like,
so.
And I think Jasmine's Black in some way, like not African American, but yeah, it doesn't state. But they are friends who met at university, so like college, who hook up, but then decide to stay friends, and they end up as roommates. And it's basically like, do we cross that line? Can we cross that line and maintain our friendship? And then what happens if we cross that line? Where do we go from there? And so, I mean, obviously this book is a romance. You guys, like, going into a romance book, like what that's going to look like. It is steamy. I do enjoy the steamy scenes in here. It is dual POV. What else? I mean, we got our triggers already. It's not very long. It is a quick read. So, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it. So I guess we'll just kind of dive right in. So, all right, so let's go ahead and get started. Oh, no, wait, before we do that, I meant to say this last time, but this is our 51st episode, which means last episode was our 50th episode,
really?
And then next episode will be our 52nd, so we're almost at a year.
Whoop, whoop.
I can't remember when our first episode dropped, so I'm going to look, but I meant to say that. So we've officially hit 50 episodes, which is a milestone, and we're almost at our 1 year mark, so super cool. Just wanted to shout that out. So now we can get started. So if you have not read this book and you do not want to be spoiled, this is your notice to pause here and come back later. If not, we're going to go ahead and get into the book. So this book opens with Jasmine. She's comforting her friend Asmita, who is upset about her relationship. Asmita has a girlfriend and she wants to make it official, but Jasmine can't understand, like, why then is she upset about this? But Asmita basically feels like she's not good enough for her girlfriend. And Jasmine feels bad because, like, she also has those own thoughts about herself. But she tells Asmita, or Mita, sometimes she calls her, like, she needs to shut up. And, like, she lets her know, like, no one in this world is too good for you. And so she goes home and she has a roommate / landlady. So, like, she lives with this girl named Matilda, who she calls Tilly, but now also wants to be referred to as Maddie, so she has 3 names. And, like, Matilda / Tilly / Maddie is rich, but also Jasmine is rich, but, like, chooses to, like, live on her own. So her dad is rich, but she's also now, like, a lawyer, so she has her own money. But she lives with Maddie, Matilda, Tilly, whatever. And she gets home, and, like, Tilly is, like, basically like an airhead. And she comes home and Tilly's like, there was a flood. And she's like, okay. So she goes to the bathroom and she's like, I don't see a flood. Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, oh, it was in the spare room, which happens to be her room. So she's like, okay. So she goes in her room and she's instantly pissed. And Tilly's like, yeah, it took hours to stop it from flooding. And Jazz just, like, snaps and she's like, so why didn't you take any of my stuff out here? Like, she's got, like, priceless art, priceless clothes. Like, she's a rich girl. She's got nice designer stuff in here. And that's when we learned that she's, like, a lawyer and has money and, like, custom items and stuff. And so Tilly says, like, well, like, I was afraid, like, I might get electrocuted. I didn't know what to do. My dad's going to sue the building. And she's like, no. Tell your dad, like, don't sue the building. I want my room fixed. I want my items replaced. And I want it all done in, like, a reasonable time frame. But she's like, I know even with all of that, Like, it's still going to take, like, a decent amount of time. And she's like, I know I could ask my dad, but, like, I don't want to ask my dad. Like, I have my own money. And, like, she basically is, proud about the whole thing. So she's like, I've got to find somewhere to stay. And she's only got one person that she can call. So she calls her friend, Rahul. And we jump to 7 years ago. And one of the hard things about this book, it doesn't have, like, chapter numbers. It, like, jumps between who's speaking and also, like, the time frame. Because we kind of go back in time. So I don't even know who's speaking at this point because I didn't note it. It took me a minute to kind of get into the groove here. But we jumped to 7 years ago. I think this is Rahul speaking. And he met her, as in Jasmine, in the library at their university. Because she took his seat at his table in the library. And she was super sexy. And he's just, like, staring at her. And he has a student, like, another student with him. I think they were friends. And he, like, warned him, like, she's, like, a look, don't touch type of girl. Like, you don't want to mess with her. And, but he's like, okay, whatever. And he goes up to her anyway, and everyone's like looking like that's basically Regina George, and you don't approach her. So he goes up to her and is like, you're in my seat. And she's like, yeah, I know. And so he sits there and like for an hour, he's trying to work and cannot. And then all of a sudden she just gets up and leaves. And then the next day he comes back and she's in his seat again. But that day it's like raining out. So when she goes to leave, he's like, hey, you can have my jacket. And she's like, you know, I bet I can stop the rain. And she like puts her hand on the glass and it's like the drop like kind of like follows her finger or whatever. And she's like, choose a raindrop or whatever. Cause she likes to bet. Jazz likes to bet. And she tells him like, I like the way that you talk. And she wants to bet on the raindrops and like, he ends up winning, but she still refuses to take his jacket or whatever. And then the next day she comes back again. So they start spending like every day together. And then one day she just randomly like hugs him. And there's almost like there's a spark between them. And so 2 weeks go by and she invites him back to her place. And he thought like, okay, she might kiss me or whatever. And he wanted to know like, you know, if he should tell her, like, you know, I've never been with anybody, but no, she just, like, pulls his clothes off and starts, like, touching on herself, and, like, they just have sex. That's just it. Like, boom, bam, bam, done. And so, like, afterwards, he's like, what you doing tonight? And she's like, oh, well, like, I'm open to do this again. And he's like, oh, do you want to come out with me? And, like, he can tell, like, that kind of turned her off a little bit. And she's like, oh, I don't, like, really do that. As in, like, she doesn't do like committed things. Mm-hmm. She's okay with like just sex, but like when it becomes a thing, she's not into that. And he's like, oh, like I just meant like friends. And she's like, I don't shag my friends. You know, they're British, so they don't shag. And so at that point, Rahul basically decided like, I don't want to lose this girl completely, so I will be her friend instead of sleeping with her. He'll sacrifice sleeping with her to be her friend. So we jump back to the present time and he is picking her up and she gets in the car and she just starts crying, explaining that she wants to go to his place and like explaining everything that happened in her room. And he realizes that she's crying not because of what happened in her room, but for the simple fact that she needs him and she does not like to like need anybody. So back at the apartment, Rahul cooks her dinner and like she gives him a hard time. So Rahul basically is like this like gym bro, like he's like super lean, doesn't eat like, I think he eats meat, but like he doesn't eat like cheese or like bread. And she is like, I only want carbs. She drinks alcohol. He never drinks anything but like water. And so he ends up cooking her dinner. And she settles in and she immediately is like, he looks good, but she does not want to cross that line with him again. And so we switch back over to him. It's been a week and he is struggling. So he is like immediately out of the house as soon as his eyes open, and he is out of the house all day and all night until he has to go home. He has been avoiding her as much as possible. And like, he literally has like a friend that he's been out with every night, and Friday night comes and he's like, bro, no, like he's like, it's Friday night. Like, I'm not going out with you tonight. Whatever is at home, you need to deal with that. I'm not going.
Face up to it.
Yeah. So he gets home Friday night and he thinks like she's gone out for the night, and she did go somewhere, but she comes home drunk and he's like just got out the shower. So he's in a towel and he gives her like some water to drink and he asks like, who let you come home like this? And she says like, I got dumped. And he's like, what? Because we just said like, she doesn't do relationships. I don't think she's ever been in an actual relationship. And he's like, how did you get dumped? I didn't know you did relationships. And she's like, neither did I. And she says some guy named Paul, basically like she was hooking up with this guy named Paul and he told his friends that they were together, and then was like, basically she kind of confronted him about it. And so then he like ended it. So he broke up with her even though they were never a thing. And Paul, like, ends up telling her, like, you're just going to die alone. Like, he was really nasty to her. And so she asks Rahul, like, let's play a game. And he's like, I don't want to play or whatever. But he agrees to one, and, like, he pulls out dice because that's, like, their thing. She loves any kind of game or betting or whatever. And basically what they're playing for, because they don't play any games without, like, a bet. They're playing for time because she knows that he's been avoiding her all week. And she's, like, rubbing on him and says, like, you've been avoiding me. And he can tell that she, like, is upset. So he says, you don't have to play for my time. And she says, well, I'm not going to ask you for it. So he ends up winning. But what he says he wants is an hour with her. And she looks shocked because she never asked, like, what he wanted when they set the terms of the game. And he wonders if she'll push him away because that's what she always does when it seems like they're getting too, like, emotionally close. Like, she doesn't care about physical contact, but anything, like, emotionally, she pushes you away. But she actually seems excited about this, and she's like, what are we going to do or whatever? And he's like, it'll be a surprise. And she's like, okay, well, it's time for bed. So as they're heading to their rooms, she's like, okay, well, I have to do my, like, 12-step skincare or whatever, which, girl, I feel you, because I am dedicated to my skincare routine. And some nights I'm like, I do not want to do that, but I am dedicated and I'm consistent. So she has to do her 12 steps, and he says, like, your skincare can wait till the morning. And she says, skincare waits for no bitch. And he calls her a brat, and she tells him that he says that a lot, so type it into Pornhub. And I was, like, cackling.
I literally laughed out loud.
I love it. He calls her a brat throughout, like, the whole book. Like, that's his little, like, word for her. So we jump to 6 years ago, and this is Rahul. And so basically he goes home with her on, like, a holiday or something, and he meets her father. So Jasmine's father asks him, like, are you her boyfriend? And he's like, no, I'm just her friend. And that's, like, he knew that she was rich, but, like, he kind of forgot. Because, you're at, like, school with your friends, and, like, unless they're, like, flaunting it, you just really don't remember. So then he gets her house, and she basically, what I imagined was the house from, what's the movie that I wanted you to watch so bad?
Saltburn?
Saltburn, yes. I was like, what's the movie that...
That's what I was imagining.
Yeah, that's what I was like, that's what I imagined, like, the whole time.
You started thinking, I'm like, I probably haven't watched it.
No, I was like, that's all I could picture was, like, the Saltburn house. So, like, he gets there and his dad's like, you want something to drink? And he's like, what? And he's like, you can give me some water. And he's like, oh, I like you more, like, you don't drink. And his dad's like, oh, well, like, his girlfriend makes some lemonade. And then Rahul feels bad because he knows that Jasmine doesn't like the girlfriend. So the girlfriend's not the mom. These are two different people. So he's like, sure, but, like, he feels guilty. But anyway, so the dad goes to get the lemonade, and while he's gone, he sees Jasmine, like, outside in a bikini, like, with a hose, like, watering the garden or whatever. And she comes up to him and was like, basically is like, my dad's interviewing you, kind of, because I don't normally bring people home. And what we find out is, like, she's never brought any friends home. And he does kind of think, like, she does kind of only spend time with me. And he does feel special, but then, like, randomly, she will, like, randomly hang out with other people, and then he doesn't feel so special. So he never really knows how to feel. And he's like, yeah, your dad went to go get me some lemonade. And that's when she's kind of like, oh, like, the girlfriend's lemonade. And she's like, well, like, my dad has killed people. And, like, he starts to freak out. And she's like, I'm just kidding. But, like, at the beginning of the book, it kind of was like a joke or whatever that, like, Jasmine's dad kills people. And, like, that's why people are kind of scared of Jasmine, because they think, like, she's kind of a murderer like her dad. So, and they never do say what the dad does. But he is really rich. So he could be in the mob. I don't know. So, anyway, so she's, like, basically that she's going to show him the garden at night, because apparently it's nice at night. So that night, she wakes him up, takes him out at the garden, and, like, it is, like, some super nice garden at night. I don't know anything about gardens. But they sit under the stars, and they talk, and this is when she talks to him about her mom. So basically, her mom left when she was a kid, and she basically says, like, I don't think that my mom ever wanted to be a mom, and she thinks that her mom never should have had her. And, like, basically her mom kind of just stayed with her dad because of the money. And then one day, like, the only reason her mom is gone is because her dad ended up divorcing her. And, like, her mom would come and visit, but then one day her mom got a boyfriend and then just decided to stop coming. And she never knew why, I think, until she was an adult. And finally, one day, her dad told her that her mom had said she was going to stop coming. But, like, basically, as a child, like, her mom just stopped showing up. And she would, like, wait for her. And she just wouldn't show up anymore. So, like, she's got all this, like, she's got mom issues. So they kind of talk about that. So we go back to the present time, and we're with Jasmine. And it is, now it's Saturday, so it's the weekend. And she just, like, cannot stop, like, ogling him. He, like, went to the gym, he worked out, and he goes to the gym a lot because basically he's, like, got all of this energy he's got to, like, work out. And she actually had forgot about the game the night before because she was drunk. And so, because he's like, you know, don't forget about our surprise. And she's like, surprise. So then she remembers, and she cannot believe that she, like, begged him basically for attention last night. So she's kind of, like, embarrassed. But he kind of, like, grabs her, and she, like, is, like, freaking out. Oh, I was like, Evie, what are you doing? And she just kind of, like, thinks about how, like, maybe he's the only person that she would break her friend rule for. So we go to Rahul, and he takes her to the surprise, which is IKEA. And he's taking her so that she can decorate her room at his house. And he tells himself, like, you know, she'll be back at Tilly's in 4 weeks. And they, like, are going through IKEA. She loves IKEA. But they get to the kids section, and it's like she, like, loses all her excitement. And he does think about how she never interacts with kids. And she kind of wants to just, like, avoid that section altogether. And he's like, I take it you don't want kids. And she's like, no, I do. And he's like, I can't believe it because, like, you're allergic to commitment. And she says, well, let me know if you like to volunteer because physically you've got a good thing going. And he's like, well, how do I donate? And then that kind of, like, throws her off a little bit. And she kind of just, like, blows him off. And she's like, you know, you can't have kids anyways. Like, you work too much. And he's like, well, I kind of have to. And he thinks, like, she's going to bring up the day. And what we learn is that his dad died. And he thinks that she's going to bring up his dad's funeral. But she doesn't. But he says, you know, I'm the head of the family now. And she's like, no, that would be your mom. And he says, no. But she says, you know, you're not even the oldest person in your family. And he admits that he does feel guilty because he feels all this pressure now. So I'm assuming, it's never, like, explicitly stated. I'm assuming he's either the only boy or the oldest boy in this family, which is also why I assume he's, like, Indian, like, from his name. And then, like, just from, like, kind of how, like, their culture works with, like, men. So I'm kind of assuming these things. Yeah. But it's been a year since his dad died. And she just tells him, like, your dad would be proud of you. And that night they play for time again. And this time she wins and, like, makes him watch movies. I think they watch the Tomb Raider movies. And he wakes up, like, in the middle of the night, like, really early in the morning. And they basically had, like, fallen asleep together on the couch. And he's just, like, laying with her, trying not to wake her up. But then she wakes up, and they both, like, you can tell they both want each other. And he leans in and starts to kiss her. And she's, like, begging for more. And she says she wants it like the last time. And he tells her that she was unforgettable. So then we switch over. I think we were in Jasmine. Nope, we're still in Rahul. So we're still in Rahul. And she asks him, like, not to leave a mark on her where someone can see. And she says, living with you made me think, like, we could try friends with benefits. And that just kind of shuts him down completely. And to him, he's like, you know, this is just the same old Jasmine. And he has just never gotten over her. And he says, like, you know, we should have done this. So now she's confused. And she says, like, you know, I don't think it would be complicated. You're not a complicated man. And he says, you know, he'll never have her the way that he wants. And he tells her, you know, I only do exclusive. And she's like, that's fine. Like, I'm not going to sleep around, basically. But then she gives, like, this fake laugh. And he knows her really well. So he knows this is kind of like a fake laugh. And she goes, like, you know what? You saved us from ourselves. Like, let's just go to bed. And he knows that she's hurt because he's turned her down. So we jump back 4 years. And we're still with Rahul. And he is in his new apartment, but his new flat. And basically what we learn is that he went away for 2 years, supposedly for school, but basically he went away for 2 years to get away from Jasmine because he was just so in love with her that he was falling apart.
It was making life incredibly difficult.
Yeah, like he could not function. And so he was like, in order to save himself and his friendship, he had to go away. So he basically cut off almost all contact with her. And he comes back, he got a new apartment, he feels like he's over her, or he did see her while he was gone, but it was like only if somebody else was around, like very controlled, very rare, short time period, all that stuff. But she shows up at his apartment. He knew she was coming, but she shows up, and he's immediately sucked back in. So like that 2 years did absolutely nothing for him. So they play cards, and they're like betting with M&Ms, and they're betting for like snacks from each other's parents. And he tells himself like leaving was fine because like, look, like we came back, like we're good friends, like it all worked out. Like, dude, you're delusional. You are delusional. So Jasmine asks, like, you know, did you do what you needed to do when you were gone? And he wonders, like, oh my God, does she know, like, I left because of her? But she doesn't. Like, he just is, just, like, thinking this. And so she's winning the bet or whatever as they're playing this game. So that was just a quick flashback. We go back to present time, and he wakes up, and he realizes, like, oh, crap, I didn't set my alarm. So he wakes up late, and he remembers what happened or what almost happened last night. So he goes to the bathroom wondering, like, oh, she must hate me, like she must already be gone. But he walks in on her. She's fully dressed, but she's like in the shower, and she literally like slices a chunk out of her leg, which I've done that.
Yeah,
ouch.
I'm like,
I was like, because she was like shaving her legs like late, and I don't know. So she was shaving her legs, cut her leg, and he like picks her up and takes her like in one of their rooms and like bandages her up. And he's like, you know, I think you should take off work today. And she's like, well, I'll take off the morning if you will take off the morning, because he's a super control freak. And he hates like disrupting his routine, but he agrees. So we switch over to Jasmine, and she's like having a wonderful day. They're just like laying around in his bed. They're relaxing. She loves his smell. She honestly was able to forget that he rejected her last night for a while. And honestly, she's like, then she starts thinking about it, and she's like, I wanted him like so badly, but he was just like, he's too good for her to use and discard. So like, she's not upset. Like, she does think that he's too good for her. And he like catches her looking at him like as she's thinking about this, and he's like, what's wrong? And she says, it's you. And he starts to apologize for last night, and she tells him not to. And she says, I hope I didn't make it awkward. And he says, no, I shouldn't have kissed you. And she says, I get it. You don't want to complicate things. He says, you don't want to complicate it, and I don't want to lose your friendship. And they start to talk about his mom and like the love that he has, because like she makes some little comment about like how his mom thinks he's like the smartest thing or whatever, blah, blah, which makes her like have a little like pang of like jealousy, because obviously she doesn't have that relationship with her mom. And then she feels bad that she like feels jealous about it. And so like anytime she has that, she always like deflects to sex. And he's like, you know, we should go, basically. And her dad calls her because her dad is like on some like month-long cruise or something. So he calls and checks in on her, and she didn't want to tell him, but it was like she couldn't help herself. So she tells him about the apartment, and he's like, well, where are you staying? And she's like, oh, I'm staying with Rahul. And he goes, that guy just can't help doing that to himself. And she says, like, in her mind, she's like, I know, like, I'm a burden to him. But I took it as, like, no, your dad knows that Rahul loves you, and you're just an idiot. Which is, like, that's how I took it. Like, I'm assuming that the dad knows, like, not that he thinks that she's being a burden on him. But you can interpret that however you want. So she goes to work for, like, the rest of the day. She runs into Asmita, and Asmita's like, you know, what's wrong? Because she can tell, like, she's upset or whatever. And she's like, you know, I really, like, want to know. Like, she really wants to be good friends with her. And Jasmine thinks, like, you know, how rarely people actually mean, like, what's wrong. You know, people ask, like, oh, how's your day? Like, no one actually cares about, like, how your day is. But, like, you know, Asmita really does care. And she thinks, like, no one ever actually means that, except for Rahul. He always means that. And Jasmine just tells her, like, you know, I'm just confused. And Asmita goes like, wow, I can't believe that you're actually going to answer me. Because Jasmine probably never tells anybody anything. And Jasmine tells her, like, I'm sorry. Like, I know I'm such a shitty friend. And Asmita says, like, no, you're not a shitty friend. Like, but you can be, like, very distant at times. Like, you don't want to get close to anyone. And Asmita tells her, like, we should have a girls' night. Like, you, me, and, like, her girlfriend. Which, I don't know, like, that's kind of, I don't mind to be a third wheel, but, like, some people don't like to be third wheels. I'm perfectly fine being a third wheel. I'm third wheeling with my friends all the time.
Yeah.
I'm okay with
Same.
So we jump over to Rahul, and he has been like confused and frustrated for like 3 days. And he's at work, and like his coworker comes in because he like asks for some like meaningless file or something at work, and they're like, why do you want this? He like gives some reason, and they're like, you're a horrible liar, which is also what Jasmine says all the time. Like, she's always like, you have no poker face, like you cannot lie. And basically like the whole office is on edge because he's like walking around like moody and like pouting or whatever. So his coworker's like, you need to go home, like, but basically he's back to avoiding Jasmine and like avoiding going home. And basically since that night, and then the whole like shaving incident or whatever, she has not tried anything. Like, she apologized, she's keeping her distance, but like he just wants her more and more. He literally masturbates at work. Like, he is on edge, and it does nothing for him. Nothing. Like, he's a donkey on the edge. So we go back over to Jasmine. She hangs out with Asmita and her girlfriend, and she comes home and she feels bad because she's jealous. So she feels bad for feeling jealous. And she walks into Rahul, and he just looks angry, but what it really is just like passion. Like, he's just like bubbled over at this point. And he's like shirtless. He's got on his like workout shorts, and he's like got to like glisten to him because he's like been working out. So she's like, you good, bro? And she's like, here, you want some water? And like she goes, and then she grabs their cards, and he like moves all quickly, and he's like, you want to bet? She was like, sure. And like she was like turned on because she's like, oh, I think he changed his mind. Like, I think he wants to do this. Okay, cool. So he's like, we're playing for time. And basically, if she wins, then she can do whatever she wants with him, and vice versa. So basically, the game is real quick. It's whoever pulls the highest number card wins. Very quick. She pulls an 8, he pulls a 9, and he gets an hour. So like, he immediately like pulls her from this chair and like starts making out with her. And he tells her like, if they're gonna do this friends with benefits thing, then she can't have anyone else, like, because he's only exclusive, and she agrees. And yeah, you can figure out what they do from there. Yeah, it's very hot, very heavy. It's the best day of his life. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the next day, at work, Jasmine is like, she's stressed because she's like doesn't know what to do with her feelings. And Asmita's like, what's wrong? And she's just like, it's this case I'm working on.
Yeah, sure.
And she's like, okay. And she's like, are you sure that Rahul's not like dead at home? And then like another coworker is like, what? And she's like, I'm just kidding. And then so she goes home, and like she showers, and like that does relax her, and he cooks her lasagna with real cheese. And so then like, and she like is like real snappy, like when she gets home, like, stop checking on me, like stop mothering me or whatever. So she comes home, like eats, and they cuddle, and they're all good. And he asks like, okay, like, so what's wrong with you? And she's like, she's got emotions, and she's trying to fight them because this girl is insufferable. That's what this is. Jasmine is insufferable. And so she tells him like, oh, I just miss my dad. Okay, whatever. And he's like, okay, what else is wrong with you? And she accidentally says like, she just doesn't know what they are now. Like, what are we now? The infamous, like, what does this make us?
And coming from Jasmine.
I know. And he says, we do whatever you want now, brat, as always. And she's like, well, what does that mean? And he's like, well, you're still my best friend. And if you want what happened last night to happen again, well, first of all, it wasn't just last night. It was last night and this morning. But anyways, if you want what happened last night to happen again, it will. If you don't, then it doesn't have to. But like, no matter what, like, I'm still going to be here for you. And she's like, basically like, it can't be that easy. It's too easy. It's never that easy. Like, so we jump back over to Rahul, and they are hanging out with friends and like whatever. There's like a pool wherever they are. It's not a pool party because it's cold, but he like hops in the pool, and he's like trying to get her to join. So of course he like makes a bet, like, I bet I can hold my breath longer than you. So she cannot like turn down a bet. So she jumps in. And, of course, he gets, like, all close with her, and she thinks he's going to kiss her, and, like, she's like, he shouldn't kiss me, like, we're not a couple, but, like, she also wants him to do it, but he doesn't, and he, like, gets all close to her, and he goes, you're my best friend, and I'm like, ouch, that would hurt my soul, but this is Jasmine, so whatever. And she asked him because, like, the whole like first part of this book, she's always talking about his hair. He has super curly hair, but he like gels it down or whatever, and she hates it because she likes to run her fingers through his hair. And she's like, why do you hate your hair? And he's like, it's just so curly. And she's like, my hair's curly. And he loves her hair. And he's like, I don't like it like that. I like it to be under control because he's a control freak. And he's basically like, I can never be like you. And she's trying not to take offense to that because she's trying to learn that like, not everything's about you. And, he basically tells her like, you're confident, you're wild, like you thrive in that. And he doesn't like people looking at him. Like he's self-conscious and like having his hair like that, like draws attention to him. He doesn't like that. And she tells him that, you're brave, you're charming, but if it makes you more comfortable, like to keep your hair under control, then you should do that. And we go back to Jasmine, and she is starting to realize that she's pathetic because every day she is at home waiting for him after work to come home. Like, yeah, girl, you like him. It's okay. And she's also starting to get stressed out because she is not bored yet. Like, she is waiting for the other shoe to drop. She sleeps with him and she leaves him. Like, that's it. And she doesn't like sleeping, like actual, like go to sleep with him, like afterwards, but she keeps doing it. And like, it's so weird to her how they can like go from like having sex to just like being friends. And like, it's just so easy. Like it just transitions and it freaks her out. And so like now it's the weekend and they're just in the house. She's reading her book. He's reading his book. They're just chilling and she's having a whole panic attack. And he literally, it also freaks her out because he can just sense across the room that she's having this. He looks at her and goes, calm down. And he's like, you know what? We should leave the house. So then she starts freaking out even more because she's like separately, we should go separate places. And he's like, no, girl, calm down. And so then after this, she starts freaking out even more because she's like, you know what? I don't think I'm ever going to get bored of him. And she doesn't know, like, if she's embarrassed. Like, she doesn't know what it is. She doesn't know what this emotion is. It's called love. You like it. It's called love. But okay. But she thinks she's embarrassed. That's what she thinks it is. And she's like, I don't know what it means that he wants to be seen out in public with me. Like, well, he goes out in public with you all the time. Right. No one knows that anything is different besides the two of you. Like, but okay, whatever. And so, he tells her, like, it's going to be a surprise, and she's like, I don't want it to be a surprise, and basically he, like, is using sex to distract her, and she completely forgets, like, her questions and can't even think straight. And then, like, on their way to the surprise, she is, like, literally begging to know where they're going, and she's like, oh, are we going to a strip club? And he's like, why would I take you out of the house where we were sitting to go sit in a strip club? So he basically takes her to, like, Dave & Buster's. Like, they go to, like, an adult arcade, which she loves. And then she's, like, freaking out again because she, like, looked and he, like, brought sunglasses. And he wears glasses. He is blind as a bat. So, like, he doesn't wear prescription sunglasses because she's, like, his mom has been telling him to, like, get some, but he won't. So, like, he just stares in the sun, I guess, with his glasses. So, the sunglasses are obviously for her, and that's, like, a touching thing. And she's like, okay. She's like, okay, that's fine. That's normal. And then he keeps, like, kissing her, like, nose or her forehead or something. And she's like, okay. This is fine. This is fine. She's freaking out. So we switch to Rahul, and, like, she loves this arcade. Like, she loves everything about it. And she's, like, so excited, which makes him want to kiss her even more, but he knows, like, he can't kiss her in public. And he thinks, like, he keeps seeing, like, her freak out moments, and he wonders if she's starting to, like, reconsider their situation. And now, like, it's been a few weeks, so there's only 1 week left until her room is going to be done. And he brings it up to her, and he can tell she's forgotten because she goes, like, he's like, oh, there's only 1 week left. And she's like, 1 week until what? And then she seems upset because she's like, oh, because she doesn't want to go home. So we switch back to Jasmine, and she can see, like, this look in his eyes that he's had for years. And she finally asks him, like, how long have you wanted to do this? And he tells her, forever. And as he says that, he also says, like, don't panic. Like, don't freak out. And they have sex in the parking lot. Because why not? But afterwards, he just, like, smiles at her. And she's basically like, I feel like my heart is breaking. Because she's annoying. She's so annoying. So we go back to Rahul. And they go back in. And basically, like, the bartender is flirting with her. And he's trying not to be jealous. And then when they get home, he like kisses her again, and she asks him like, why do you keep doing that? And he's just like, I like kissing you. And it's so like weird to her because she just gets in bed with him to like go to sleep, and it's so normal to her now. And I'm like, yeah, because you're a couple.
Right.
Yeah, girl. So we switch back to Jasmine, and she thanks him for the night, and he says, you know, I love spending time with you. And she says, I'm so glad I saw you at uni. And basically we get like the real backstory. So she tells him that one day I saw you going into the library, and that was actually a week before she met him. She says that basically she had followed him into the library, and she couldn't like work up the nerve to like speak to him. And then like the next day she went in there and like followed him like a little bit further. And then the third day she couldn't find him. And then like she just sat at that table and hoping he would come, and then he didn't come. So then she did it again. And she basically kept doing that until that day that he ran into her. So she kind of stalked him. Kind
of.
And he asked like, you know, why have you never told me that? And she's like, because I'm mortified. I actually don't even know why I'm telling you this now. And so he tells her, you know, that first time, that was my first time. And she is like shocked and goes, she's like, I'm having an ethical crisis. I stole your innocence. And she's like, are you harboring resentment for me? And he's